One last positional analysis video. This is the last position by position video I'm going to make. Circumstances dictate that I have to. I'm not happy about it. No Seahawks fan should be happy about it, but it is what it is. So a month ago when I was looking at the Seahawks depth chart and roster, I said wide receiver was not a need this offseason, and I stand by that at the time. I don't think it was. And then a couple weeks ago, we got word that Baldwin was going to have a hernia surgery, sports hernia surgery, and it was kind of not cool. And now we heard this morning a report that his career might be over because of the sports hernia surgery, and then it became really not cool, like super not cool. So I mean, I don't want to make too big a deal out of anything right now. All we have is one report. I think it's from Ian Rappaport. All we have is his word that it's possible that his career is over. But if it is, or if we don't have him for a good chunk of 2019, and when we do have him, if he's not very good, we've got a problem. I don't know how big of a problem it is, but it is certainly a problem in the short term and even in the long term. I mean, it really sucks that we had a guy like Doug Baldwin, who was one of the 5 or 10 best receivers in the league for a couple years, and we were never really able to take full advantage of him because of maybe the offensive line, maybe the offensive coordinator, maybe this, maybe that, who knows. But all I know is that Doug Baldwin was one of the most talented receivers in the league for a few years, and if it's over, it sucks because we never did that much with it. We had a couple of playoff wins. That's about it. So the good news is, and the reason why I'm still not dying for a wide receiver is Tyler Lockett had an incredible 2018 season. In terms of efficiency, he was one of the best receivers in the league. We throw the ball to Lockett, good things happen. He made big plays. He made small plays. He made tough catches. He made, clutch catches. He might have had one drop the whole season, for all I know. I don't even know if he had one. So Lockett looks like a superstar that we're just not utilizing as much as we should. If we threw him the ball as much as we should, he might be a Pro Bowler every year. Hard to know, but we have a stud receiver on the roster with or without Baldwin. David Moore showed some flashes last year. I like him. I like what I see. He has an interesting skill set that we can use. He's good in the red zone, it seems like. He's good at making big plays. He made some of the biggest plays that the Seahawks had last year were made by David Moore. The juggling touchdown against Detroit, the game-time touchdown on 4th down against the Panthers. The dude was like a Jermaine Kearse in that, you watch him and you're like, he's not that talented. I can see why he wasn't a highly touted player, but he's producing. And then we have Jaron Brown, who is a perfectly fine, reliable veteran guy who we know what we're going to get. He's okay. He does his job, and that's totally fine. And we can win with him playing a decent number of snaps. So that's the good news. We don't desperately need a wide receiver because the ones we have without Baldwin are okay. Also good news, we don't throw the ball that much. There might be 1 or 2 teams in the whole league next year that throw the ball fewer times than these Seahawks will. We know that. We like to run the ball, so having big-time receivers, not as big of a deal. Also good news, we have a great quarterback who can make receivers look better than they are, who find ways to produce with lesser talent. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Wilson was throwing to guys who were working at Foot Locker in a Super Bowl. So we don't need to go out and spend a bunch of money or resources on getting a big-time receiver because of this Baldwin news. But all that being said, we need 3 capable guys. We need 3 guys we can count on from Sunday to Sunday. Lockett, sure. David Moore, maybe. We know Jaron Brown is just okay. So just in case the David Moore thing doesn't pan out the way we're hoping right now, because by the end of the season last year, we were barely playing David Moore because we couldn't trust him. I don't know if he played in the playoff game. I'm pretty sure he didn't get a pass thrown at him the whole playoff game, so we might not totally trust the dude right now, and I understand why. And if we develop that trust in him this year and we're able to play him, if we make the playoffs again next year, then great, we're good. But I want to at least explore the possibility that we're not really believing in the David Moore experiment quite yet. So we don't need a big-time guy. We just need a guy who's going to be okay, because We already have 2 guys that we know are okay. So in my mind, you only really need 3 okay guys in this offense where we don't throw the ball that much. We have a couple decent tight ends, we have a couple decent receivers, and then we just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. I would like to pass the ball more this year, and I believe that we will, but I'm not believing we're suddenly going to throw the ball 50 times every game, and we're going to need like 5 good receivers or 4 good receivers even. 3 receivers is fine. So, free agents that caught my eye. I don't want Des Bryant. I don't want Jordy Nelson. Nobody wants Jordy Nelson, it looks like. I don't really want Michael Crabtree either. I don't want these guys who I think can't get open anymore. We tried this last year with Brandon Marshall, and after 2 games, he basically didn't do anything. And then he was off the team after a couple weeks past that. So I don't want to do that again. I want to get guys who, I'm not saying they need to be great, but I just need them to be able to get open and catch passes that hit them in the hands. And so it's thin. There aren't a lot of great free agent wide receivers out there right now. And even if we had gotten in on this at the start of free agency, it still wouldn't have been great. There's Robbie Anderson on the Jets, but you would have to give up your 2nd round pick to get him, and we don't have one. So the guys that I kind of like are Dontrell Inman. He was on the Colts last year. He was their number 2 receiver behind T.Y. Hilton, and he was okay. He had like 300 yards in the second half of the season. Obviously, he was playing across from a really good receiver in T.Y. Hilton, and he produced okay. If you look back, he was okay the year before too. He had one season like 4 years ago for the Chargers where he had like 800 receiving yards, and it seemed like he was actually developing into a full-time player. But then he got hurt the next year, I think, and barely played, and then he was off the Chargers, and then he's been floating around. And the last couple years, he kind of sort of found himself, had himself a couple decent years. I'd be willing to give him like 3 or 4 million for 1 year and see what's up. He's the one guy that kind of catches my eye as somebody who might surprise me and be more than I think that he is. Like, he might be able to reach back and have a season like he had that 1 year in San Diego. 800 yards is nothing to sneeze at when you're playing with other good receivers like the San Diego Chargers had back then. The next name is an old fan favorite, Jermaine Kearse. Jermaine Kearse went to high school like 5 minutes from where I live right now, actually. He's right down the street. I could walk there. And he had a really good season 2 years ago with the Jets. Not a Pro Bowl or anything, but he had a solid season with New York 2 years ago. Looked like he was going to maybe earn one last contract, and then last year he got hurt, didn't play that much. Now he's out there. Nobody seems to really want him. We could bring him back home. I don't know what it would cost because it's one of those things where what he did 2 years ago shows what he can do in the right offense in the right situation, and that he is a good player, but he's coming off that injury. 3 or 4 million might be what he can get just to prove that he can stay healthy this year. I'm a little hesitant because I don't want to let my bias cloud me here because I like Jermaine Kearse, but the last time he was here in 2016, it was trash. I mean, he caught like less than 50% of the passes we threw at him. We would have games where we would target him 9 times and he would catch it 2 passes. And I don't want to say it was all his fault, but he wasn't getting open, and that's what I want to avoid. I don't want to go get some receiver who never gets open like we had with Brandon Marshall last year. So I'm hesitant, but I would be interested. And the last free agent name I have here is Aldrick Robinson. I think he was on the Vikings last year. He's been jumping from team to team the last 4 years. He's very okay. 200, 300 receiving yards a season. He'll catch a few touchdowns. Last year he had 5 touchdowns, so a little bit of a red zone threat maybe. Nothing too special about him. I think you could get him for the vet minimum. He's never put up big numbers in his career or even mediocre numbers, but he's young enough to where I could see him still having fresh legs and be able to get open. So these are the kinds of, that's more my thing than, I don't want the Jordys or the Dezes or the Crabtrees, those guys who can't get open anymore. These guys, maybe Kearse is in that category too, but I just had to put him out there because I know he's familiar with this offense and this personnel and this quarterback, so it has to at least be suggested. So, little dry, but if we got one of these 3 guys, I would feel like the receiver position was probably taken care of about as good as we could hope. Draft, just to go through our draft options right now. DK Metcalf is the best receiver in this draft by most reports. He's big and fast. He's not projected to go much higher than the bottom of the first round, though. We could get him with our pick in the first round. I believe we will trade down and probably not be in position to get him if we do that. But if we stay at our current pick, we should be able to get a DK Metcalf. I like the fact that he's big and fast. That's rare. I don't know why he's not more highly touted than he is, honestly. At the same time, I don't want to spend my first pick on a receiver. I don't. And I don't think very many people here do. Oh, shit. I'm watching the Texas Tech game over here. Looks like they just maybe sealed it. But for the sake of argument, if DK Metcalf is there in our first pick, I would at least consider it, and I'd be okay with it. The next name is N'Keal Harry. I hear a lot of buzz around this name being a Seahawk. He's tracked to go at the top to middle of the second round. We could trade down and get him. I don't know a ton about him personally, but I've seen a lot of reports from Twitter that we're at least considering it, and we're bringing him in for interviews, and we're taking a look at him and stuff, so there seems to be some interest. Again, I'm not in love with the idea of spending a high pick on a receiver right now because I don't think it's that big of a deal. But if we got a guy like N'Keal Harry, we probably would expect him to be one of our 3 best receivers next year and maybe be a difference maker over a guy like a Jaron Brown, who we know is not really a difference maker. He's just okay. These next 3 names all kind of interest me more because these 2 guys, the next 2 guys, can be gotten at the bottom of the second round, probably. First guy is Hakeem Butler, 6'5". So maybe he could be the big red zone goal line target like Jimmy Graham was a couple years ago. Maybe he could be somebody that we target in the red zone. I feel like I don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that size matters that much. Because, I mean, my God, Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett have been great receivers in the red zone, and those guys are, short, relatively speaking. So I don't want to fall in love with the height, but Hakeem Butler late in the second round might be good for, a big target that can go over the top and catch, and maybe has enough to get open, so he's not like a Brandon Marshall was for us last year. Next name I like is Paris Campbell. Ran a 4.3140, so he's fast. He's pretty small, but he's very fast and quick. Seems like those receivers just do better in this offense, so I don't know. I understand that Tyler Lockett kind of covers the whole small, fast, deep threat receiver, and he's also quick, so it's not like we have a hole to fill with that kind of wideout, but 4.31 speed from a wide receiver at the bottom of the second round is solid. So if Paris Campbell's floating around out there at the bottom of the second, and we have the ability to go get him, I mean, it seems like Wilson just plays better with those types of wide receivers, so I would be interested. And the final name I want to put out there is somebody who I think will be available in the 4th round. Preston Williams, he's 6'4". Again, I don't want to make too big of a deal of height, but it is something that makes you unique and interesting, and it's something that you can't teach. You can't teach somebody to be taller. So I understand with the current receivers that we have, with Lockett being what he is, and maybe with whatever Baldwin is whenever he gets back, if he does ever get back, there seems to be more of a hole on this team for a bigger possession receiver. Somebody who can just pick up the 2nd and 7s or the 3rd and 6s. And it seems like we don't have players who do that right now. We have a more boom or bust passed offense. I remember some people complaining about that last year. Like, we're great with the short stuff. We're great with the long stuff. We don't have receivers who are able to pick up those medium conversions sometimes, it seems like. It seems like all of our good plays are always the long passes, things that are going way down the field. And maybe a guy like a Preston Williams or a Hakeem Butler, those 2 guys that are not that fast, maybe they could become possession receivers who just help us slowly march down the field. So anyway, that's my look at receiver. Free agency pool right now is dry, but I'm not really worried about that. We just need somebody who's okay, if we need anybody at all. Draft is a little more interesting, but I feel like there are just bigger needs. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want to bring in one of these veterans? Do you want to bring Jermaine Kearse back? Would you be okay with spending a top first round or second round pick on one of these guys? Do you just want to take a fourth round flyer on a guy like Preston? Do you like somebody else? I don't know. Maybe we could go trade for John Ross because the Bengals are sick of him and we know how talented he is. So I guess I'll put that out there, but I really don't think it's going to happen. So I don't really want to even talk about it because I'll get my hopes up on something that would be cool, but I don't think it's going to happen. So, all right. So next videos I make are going to be kind of more focused on the draft specifically because free agency is fading. So I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks.